If you build it, they will come. Some of you will know that reference, right? An old movie now, Field of Dreams. Kevin Costner standing out there in this cornfield with everyone around him telling him that he was nuts. He wanted to build a baseball field in the middle of Iowa, right out there in the middle. And he's getting these messages from somewhere beyond our current understanding of the world. And one of them says, if you build it, they will come. Back in 1997, church was church. It looked a particular way. It changed maybe depending on what denomination you were in. But within those denominations, church was church. And Bethlehem, down the street, was asking questions. They were asking questions like, why? What's happening with all the young people who are living in Uptown? And what are we going to do to get them to come back to church? Because they, we, Gen Xers, some of you who are here, were not going to church so much at the time. I worked in a church, so I was different. But, and while they were asking these questions, they were sitting in their basement wondering, maybe we could turn this into like a coffee shop kind of a thing. And then Raleigh Martinson, who's was a professor at Luther Seminary, came in to that group of people as a consultant and said to them, what are you going to do about the thousands of young people living in Uptown who are never going to walk into a church that looks like this? And everybody went, minds blown. They went back to the drawing board and ended up eventually calling Pam Fikencher to be the pastor who would walk around Uptown for the next 6 months trying to figure out what that should look like. And then hiring John Kearns, who was like, you want to do what in a church? You want me to do what kind of music? And we believe it was October 13th in 1997, Pam and Kearns held their first worship service of Spirit Garage and held their breath as they waited to see if anyone would show up. Johnny Law came shortly after that. Do you know the story about how Johnny Law came to church? We're going to have him tell it. There he is. Come on up.
So I was one of those Gen Xers living in Uptown, not going to church. I grew up in the church, and I was 27 at the time, and I kind of had gone through my 20s and fallen out of church and done all that. And I was at that point in my life where I was starting to get my act back together and starting to think about maybe I should go to church again. And I'd gone so far as to pull up in front of a few churches on Sunday morning and sit in the parking lot and then drive off, but hadn't quite gotten in the doors. I was also, at the time, I was working retail at this little hardware store, lumberyard in Uptown, and I was really bored one Wednesday afternoon, and I was wondering what I was going to do this weekend, and just sort of sitting there, and we had the local neighborhood paper, I think Southside Pride or one of those, and I thought, I'm just going to close my eyes and open this and point to a random page, and that's what I'm doing this weekend. So I went and I got the paper, and I opened it up on the counter, I closed my eyes, and I went, and I looked down and it says, Spirit Garage, the church with a really big door. Seriously, that is exactly how it happened. So it took me about 5 seconds, and I was like, I'm going to church. Thank you, I'll see you Sunday. And that was how it happened. Walked in the door that morning and was handed a warm piece of blueberry coffee cake. Thank you, Carl. I don't think Carl is here this morning. But a piece of coffee cake and a hot cup of coffee, and they had this long-haired freaky dude up front playing music, and I thought, this is kind of cool. The pastor dropped an F-bomb in the sermon, and I was like, okay, this could work. And then I was also in between bands at the time, and at the end of the service, John Kearns just said, hey, we're trying to get our music program started. If anybody plays music, if you're interested, come talk to me afterwards. And so I went up to him afterwards. I was like, I play guitar. I'm looking for a band. He says, bring your guitar, show up next Sunday at 9, and we'll do it. And I'm like, do you want to hear me first? You want to practice? He's like, nah, we'll figure it out. Just show up on Sunday. I was like, okay. And the rest is history. So.
Yeah, he's been here ever since, shredding on that guitar. Spirit Garage OG right there. At some point in our history, Spirit Garage began referring to itself as saying that it existed for a moment, a reason, a season, or a lifetime. For Johnny, that's looking like a lifetime. And we're better for it. Well, yeah, but you're not going anywhere, right? That's my hope. But sometimes people come for a reason. Maybe it's because they grew up in a different kind of a church, and church still makes sense to them, but this kind of being church works for them in a different way. Or maybe it's because of the music, or maybe it's because of the ability to come as you are in a different way than you can in some other churches, or at least that's the way it's perceived. For some people, it's a season. Some people show up for a season of their lives when there's been a big loss, or when they've first moved to town before putting down roots, when they first consider coming back to church, or when they first get sober, or they come for a season and we're here for it, and we're better for that too. And by the way, did you know that we count people from among our donors who were members of Spirit Garage way back a long time ago, more than a decade ago, longer than me, who haven't been here in a long time, who are still giving to Spirit Garage. During some of the leanest times of our life together, those gifts from the past were some of the strongest givers that we had, and they have kept us afloat. Well, Bethlehem keeps us afloat, but that certainly helps. And when I talk to those folks, I generally hear about a season that they spent at Spirit Garage, their particular reason for coming, and how this place and its people played a significant role in their lives for a time, and it's important enough to them that they keep giving so that it might still be around for someone else who might need that time to give that gift to them. Perhaps one of you who have found a home in this place for a while when you thought that none would exist. And that makes it a good time for me to take a moment to talk about giving. We don't always do that very often. In the summer of 2023, when we decided to set a goal that we would break through 100,000 in our giving, because we hadn't done that in a lot of years, since 2015, I think it had been. And so we set that goal, and then we talked about it last year. Our spirit's gone out again. Brand new candles. What do you do? Set that goal, and we ended up exceeding that goal by another $25,000 last year. So it was really an incredible moment for us last year. And it is that time of year again for us to think about giving to Spirit Garage, or considering really in general what your finances are about for you, and what your finances say about who you are and what you value, and where your treasures lie, as the Bible would say. Money is one of those things that moves like water through the world. If you think about it, we get paid and we spend money, we save money, maybe. And it goes out to corporations and businesses or nonprofits that help us have places to eat and food and entertainment and a place to live. Money can move through the world in some really, really good ways or negative ways. So think about how money flows in and out of your life and where it goes. And as you're doing that, consider where to direct the flow of your money, and if that can be a spiritual practice for you, the way that money is moving through your life. And then maybe Spirit Garage is a part of that for you, if it's been a place that is meaningful for you and you think is meaningful for other people, and leads people to an understanding of God and Christ that is important for this world. If you already give to Spirit Garage, thank you for your generosity. And if you've never given, maybe you can consider a gift today or before the end of the year. That'd be great. If you sometimes give, but not all the time, maybe you can consider making your gift more regular in an automated kind of a way. Those things help us immensely. Back to our moment, reason, season, lifetime. Sometimes it's a moment. People come through the doors to hear a friend make music, to be inspired, maybe to be anonymous for a day, but still be in church, to be in a sacred space. Maybe they're going through a significant life change and they need church but aren't ready to talk yet. Maybe they come to be part of a community for a moment, and we're here for that. Here's one story about that. One day back at the Hook and Ladder, someone walked in that looked like someone I knew. This is how I remember it going anyway. I couldn't quite put a name to it. I think someone else, probably Debbie, although she always came late back then, so I'm not sure that's right. Somebody went back and got a first name for me, and I knew immediately who it was. This guy named Greg. And but his story is way bigger than my part of it. So I'm going to have him tell his story today too. Come on up, Greg.
I remember the first time I heard about Spirit Garage. My wife and I we've been members of Bethlehem for many years. Both our kids were baptized there. And I remember thinking, wow, that sounds like a really cool idea, like something I'd really like to check out sometime. Well, at the time we had kids, we were busy, and I just never made it there. But something happened in my life on June 6th, 2018. I came home from work, and I remember it was a Wednesday night, because that's the night I always shoot sporting clays. And I was looking around for my car keys, and I couldn't find my car keys. And I went into my son's room, and I was looking around, and then I noticed he was slumped over in his chair. And it kind of turned my world upside down. I found out he had died of a fentanyl overdose. Probably about 3 months before that, he had a appendectomy, and we didn't know that he developed an addiction to the painkillers that he took after the surgery. So my journey to this church started one morning. I woke up, and I'm like, I really want to go. I need to go to Spirit Garage. Like, God was speaking to me, go to Spirit Garage. And I remember it was probably about 10 a.m. and I told my wife, and she's like, I can't get ready in a half an hour. It's like the church starts at 10:30. But she's like, you go ahead. So I walked into Spirit Garage, and I remember there was like cards for new people. And I filled one out completely, my name, address, phone number, everything, which I would never normally do. I did come in, and I sat in the very back. And I remember sitting there, and Holly walked up, and she's like, are you Greg Dozer? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, I'm Holly. Well, just to give a little history here, there's always been like 1 degree of separation between Holly and I. We have a shared friend named Brian, and I would always hear Brian talking about Holly. Holly did this. Holly and I went on this hike. They both lived in Seattle at the time, and so I always felt like I knew Holly, but I, didn't really know her until I went to Spirit Garage that day. Well, recently, we were reconnected again because, unfortunately, our shared friend, Brian, died of heart failure recently. And Holly put on a service here at the church for Brian. And we went to her house afterwards and had a fellowship together and talked about our memories of Brian. And so that's how I came to be here today. I was recently at a company summit, and the theme of the company summit was being vulnerable strengthens a human connection. So when Holly reached out to me and asked me to speak today, I said yes. How could I not say yes? But this church is a special place. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg and Stephanie. Brian talked about Greg and Stephanie all the time, too. Maybe it's your first time here today, and if it is, you are already a part of what life together looks like at Spirit Garage. Your presence is baked into who we know ourselves to be, who Spirit Garage is, because Spirit Garage exists for people because of people who need and are Spirit Garage for just a moment. Whatever your experience has been, we have this lesson from the Gospels where James and John are arguing about who is better and who will sit at Jesus' right hand and left hand, and they're asking Jesus if they can have that place. And Jesus asks them these hard questions about what they are willing to bear and what they're up for, and if they're up for all of it. And they have no idea what is to come, of course. With Jesus taking on the weight of the world, being put to death by the powers and principalities at work in our warmongering and death-dealing world. They would find out soon enough. For now, Jesus tells them, that's not how our world is going to work. You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them. They are their great ones and tyrants who, well, that's a line that's repeated. And their great ones and tyrants lord it over them. But it is not so among you. Instead, whoever wishes to become great among you must be the servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be the servant of all. And in Spirit Garage terms, that means that it doesn't matter how long you've been here or how many times you have been here or how long you've been gone, which leaders you've known, what identities you hold, who you bring, how long you came for or have come for, whether you play up front or lead prayers or serve coffee or not, or when you come back, you're a part of this place and we're all here for each other. No one is greater, whether you're here for a moment, a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And if you are here for the first time, we don't actually know which one that's going to be for you. Time will tell. And actually, that's true for all of us, right? I mean, I guess if you've been here for a while, you're never going to fall into the category of moment anymore. That's past for you. But maybe you came for a reason and stayed for a season, and maybe you left and came back, and maybe you left and came back a dozen times, and now you're here to stay. Whatever your story, Spirit Garage is here for it. I think Jesus ran his ministry that way too. It has become part of your faith story to be here, and you are also a part of Spirit Garage's faith story. All of us belong, and all means all. There's even a t-shirt for it. Each of you, whether you are here for the first time, the 50th, the 200th, or somewhere in the thousands, each of you has your own story to tell. You heard two today about people who came to Spirit Garage for the first time. There are many more. You have one of them. They are the best stories. Maybe tell your Spirit Garage origin story over some birthday cake today. May it not include anything like, I've been here for 62 years, and back then we walked uphill both ways. Or tell those stories, but I mean, you know what it's going to sound like. Back then we had to empty the trailer But tell them in a way that acknowledges that each person's story is as interesting as the one who was here who came first. And we have this timeline to help you out and to put yourself on. We started this on our retreat this year, which was just a couple weeks ago. We talked about the faith timeline of Spirit Garage. This is not very artistic. I should have had someone else do it. But it does have, let's see, so 1997 is right here, and it goes all the way down to here. And I put some significant things on from Spirit Garage's history on here. But you are a significant part of it too, so you can find the right place to put your own name down. You can just say, Spidey arrived. And if you're a person who comes and goes, we've talked about that. I'm one of those people. I came to Spirit Garage for the first time in 2002. And then sort of whenever I was in town, because I didn't live in town very often, but then all of a sudden, just in case you don't know, when you're an ELCA pastor, a pastor in the Lutheran Church, you have to like fill out this paperwork that that talks about who you are as a person in ministry. And Michelle doesn't like this paperwork. And I remember the last time I filled it out was 8 years ago, or 8 years ago, let's call it that. 7.5 years ago. And I was updating it, but I have in there's this place where you can tell stories about yourself as a person in ministry, 3 of them, so that a church would read those and decide, is this the right pastor for us? This is what happens with these papers. They get handed to the church to say, like, consider these profiles and see which one you might want to interview. So 7.5 years ago, I opened mine up and I started tweaking what I'd written the last time I was ready for a change. And in that, I had a paragraph about the first time I went to Spirit Garage and how when I came, we heard the song, Sarah McLachlan singing the song Ice Cream. Well, she wasn't singing it, obviously. Michelle was singing it probably. And it was, they were doing a series on understanding God through the senses, and it was Taste Day. So this song that I loved said, your love is better than ice cream, better than anything else that I've tried. Your love is better than chocolate, and everyone here knows how to cry. And it's a long way down to the place where we started from. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is a brilliant song to sing during communion. I love it. And I thought to myself, if a church can look like this, then a pastor can look like me. And it is part of the reason I went to seminary. And that's what I wrote about in that paperwork. And then all of a sudden, these years later, Spirit Garage is open. And so here, now you have me as a pastor. So on my timeline, you can see Spirit Garage show up as an important place for me in several places, but that's also true of Peter. It's certainly also true of, like Debbie has come and gone, Maris has come and gone, so lots of people. Anyway, moment, reason, season, lifetime, and maybe it's all of those for you. Could be. Somewhere out of the dust and grunge and chaos of the 1990s, this place was created. I'm sure back then people thought it was nuts. Both the church people and the people hanging out at the Electric Fetus or Global Village or Calhoun Square back in the day when that was a thing. But people came, thousands of people throughout the time that we've been around have come through the church with the really big doors. All a little quirky, all curious, and all creative in their own ways, and all led by God to this strange place. We were one of the first churches to try such an experiment, and we're still going and still building, and people are still coming and going for a moment, a reason, a season, and a lifetime. And everyone's a part of it, no one better than the other. So it's not exactly heaven, because we're all still very extremely human here. But perhaps it is some kind of field of dreams. With thanks for all that has come before us and hope for all that is to come yet, including every person who will still walk through those really big doors in the future. Amen.